is National Preparedness Month, and with the fires and storms and COVID all happening on the disaster scale, it's perfect timing to remember that we should all be ready in case of an emergency. News 5's Jessica Barretto joins us live with an expert who's helping break down everything you need to be prepared for, especially with COVID in mind. Jessica, good morning.
Good morning, Renee, and good morning, everyone. That's right. We are joined by Robin ADAIR with the Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management. So she's going to talk a little bit about how COVID can impact our evacuation plans and our emergency plans. So good morning, Robin. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about what COVID is changing when it comes to evacuation, when it comes to packing, that sort of thing.
Well, when it comes to packing, make sure that you're packing extra masks and hand sanitizer and disinfectant and maybe those gloves and anything that you might need for your family to think about COVID. If you get evacuated and need to go to an evacuation center or to some other location to stay, you make sure that you've got the stuff that you need to protect yourself from COVID. And then if you, see my mask is coming off, make sure your mask fits correctly. If you end up getting evacuated and needing to go to an evacuation center or a shelter, that's going to look a little different now too because of COVID. We need to keep social distancing, and we need to make sure that the people are protected in those situations. So you may not be asked to go to an evacuation shelter where everybody is going to congregate together in a high school gym. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep people separated. There might be more locations, and they're going to be big enough for social distancing. So make sure that if you get that evacuation notice, you're paying close attention to what the message tells you about where to go, because there might be more locations than there used to be in the past.
And yeah, and you were saying, so there's something similar to a registration process in place too to limit the amount of people.
Right. We might have a shelter where there's lots of social distancing. We might be putting people up in hotels rather than having them sleep in a like I said, a high school gym. It might look more like a drive-through testing site where you're going to be driving through in your car and registering and not even getting out of your car to keep track of people who get evacuated. So it's not going to look like it's always looked in the past, so be sure that you're ready for that. The other thing is, a lot of people, when they're evacuated, they have a plan to go to a relative or a neighbor or a friend's house or go stay with somebody.
Exactly.
And you might have to think about that, because if you're planning to go to your grandparents' house, or you're planning to go to a relative's house who might be medically compromised, or they might live in a hot spot for COVID where you don't want to go travel to, make sure that you're considering that in your evacuation plan, because you might not be able to just take for granted that you can go to that relative's house anymore because of COVID. So you have to think about those things in your planning.
So have a plan B in place, have an alternate location, in mind, and just plan ahead for that. Thank you so much, Robin. I appreciate it. And speaking of planning ahead, coming up next, we're going to tell you how to plan ahead, what to keep in mind, and that's coming up right after this. Always watching out for you, Southern Colorado. Jessica Barretto, News 5.